Maybe you already have a dog or a cat and you've got companionship with a furry animal, that's taken care of, and you've realized that you might want the challenge and fascination that comes with keeping a reptile. And you'd like it to be a beginner reptile, preferably one without legs or eyes that blink. I realized I needed to exclude legless lizards from this. I was just trying to come up with a creative way to say snakes. But you know what? Also, a turtle could be born with some weird deformity and just no legs. Poor little guy. So you're looking into getting a beginner snake, or maybe you already have a beginner snake and you're wondering if you're ready for one that seems a little bit more challenging. You know, this video also might be good for breeders of, let's say, rainbow boas. Because when somebody walks up and asks, hey, is a baby rainbow boa a good first snake? And they answer, yeah. But actually it could be, and I'll explain why. By the way, this is Kodiak, and he would be a great beginner snake, but you can't have him. He lives here in the green room. Hi, buddy. You're a good beginner snake. A little bit later, I'm going to list off some specific species that you might want to look into. But let me lay out the major point of this video right now, and that is a snake is an exotic animal. Even though they're sold in just about every pet store in America and probably most other places around the world, snakes are exotic animals. And as you've probably heard me say 100 times before, I believe that anybody that keeps an exotic animal should be as much of an expert in that animal and their care as they possibly can be before acquiring that animal. It would be like if I decided to buy a zebra without any prior knowledge. I was just going to learn as I go. After the first week, I'd probably be in a zebra Facebook group going, hey everybody, I need a little bit of help. It gets real mean when I try to ride it, and how do I get it to let go of my arm? You need quite a bit of knowledge before you buy a zebra, and you need quite a bit of knowledge before you buy a snake. Incidentally, my guess is that a snake is much easier to care for than a zebra. But who knows? I don't know anything about zebras. So if you're on board with the concept of being an expert in whatever species you choose, then that species is your beginner snake. You pick the snake that you like, become an expert, do all the research, and then you get that snake. Oh great, now everybody's gonna go and buy their favorite venom-loaded monster snake. Real responsible, Bob. Yeah, just learn everything you can about the long-toothed death rattler of the Saharas, and then go get yourself one. Jiminy Christmas, why am I even recording this? Well, Kent, first of all, there's no such thing as a long-toothed death rattler, and second, that's actually a really good point. The snake you choose should be non-venomous, and it shouldn't be large enough to cause you any significant damage. So if you decide that a mainland reticulated python is your snake of choice, you'll not want to start with an adult. You'll want a baby, which is very manageable, and as the snake grows, you can grow as a keeper and learn how to work with that particular snake. I doubt that I needed to tell you that, but I guess we'll cover as many bases as we can here. Now, if this is going to be your first snake, and especially your first reptile, there are some basic reptile keeping things that you have to learn. How do you provide a temperature gradient in an enclosure? The importance of hides and clutter, how to have an escape-proof enclosure, because you're not going to be one of those people that piles up books on a screen top, right? Once you have those basics down, it's just about tweaking things for that particular species. So if I already know how to keep a ball python, and now I want to get a black-headed python, I'm going to use the knowledge that I have from keeping ball pythons about heat gradients and basically do the same thing. I'm just going to turn the heat up a bit for my black-headed python. That's not the only difference in keeping black-headed pythons and ball pythons. There's other things you have to know, but it's a good example of taking the knowledge that you have and just tweaking it for a different species. It's not like you're going from keeping a goldfish to keeping a spider monkey. What size fish tank do I need for a monkey? No results. It's just a sidestep of general reptile keeping knowledge and applying that to a different species. I saw a comment recently that said, I like boas and pythons, but this is going to be my first reptile ever, so I'm getting a corn snake. Now, what that could have meant is I like boas and pythons, but corn snakes are my favorite snakes, so I'm getting that one first. Or it could have meant, I like boas and pythons, but I've heard that corn snakes are easier to keep, so that's what I'm getting instead. And that's kind of the way I took it. But remember that a corn snake is still an exotic animal. It's going to require the same amount of research as a boa or a python. And it's a snake that could live up to around 20 years. You're committing a lot of time to that pet. So I hope it's the one that you like. You're going to like it. It's a corn snake. You're going to like it. I mean, it's going to be fun. But my point is, get the snake that you want. That's within your budget. That's another important thing. You know, figure out what snakes are within your budget. Your favorite snake might be a Bolin's python, but maybe $10,000 is a little too much for you to shell out for a Bolin's python. I don't know, maybe it's not. Maybe you're the Monopoly guy and you're sitting here watching this with a top hat and a monocle. But figure out what's in your price range and find your favorite snake within that budget and start researching the heck out of them. Kevin McCurley, a nerd, keeps a number of Bolin's pythons. I think he definitely should start wearing a top hat and monocle. That'd be a good look for him. Now, in doing your research, you might find out that there's something about the snake you chose that is a deal breaker. So let's say you love the look of Asian rat snakes, but you find out that they're unlikely to just chill around your neck while you're doing the dishes, and you definitely want a dishwashing partner. No big deal. You've learned a little bit about one snake, and now you're going to pivot to another one. It's a great way to learn some things about a few snakes before you get your first one. Did you know that Green Room Pythons has a Discord server? It's free to join, and you can be a part of that really cool, positive, and helpful community. There's a link for Discord down below in the description of this if you would like to join. There are hidden channels, though, for my Patreon members that are part of the Horde of Keepers, that when they're on Discord, they can jump in and do Horde of Keepers only stuff, like play Dungeons and Dragons together, but also just chat and whatever. So if you want to get deeper into that community, you can go to patreon.com/greenroompythons and support the channel that way. This channel is still going and will continue to, just because of the support of these folks here. So I really appreciate them. They get all kinds of extra content, extra videos, behind the scenes stuff. I went out one night with Dave Kaufman and Brian Cusco, and we got video of that that's on Patreon. All kinds of just fun, weird stuff. Thanks so much to all those folks who support the channel, as well as the channel sponsors, Lane Labs, Gray Family Snakes, and Black Box Cages. Support them if you can. There are your discount codes. Now let's get back to the video. Oh, let me tell you why I mentioned rainbow boas earlier, and then I'm going to go through a list of species that you might want to look into. The biggest issue with rainbow boas is when they are babies, if you don't get their humidity right, they just might die. They're very fragile when it has to do with that. This rainbow boa, by the way, is an adult that we found in the Amazon jungle where their humidity is perfect and they have no problems with it. But if you make humidity part of your research and you learn everything about how to provide it, how to keep it consistent, and exactly what the snake needs, then you're ready to have a rainbow boa as your first snake. Now, I'm guessing that most breeders of rainbow boas explain that to people. But for those of you who say, sure, it's a great first snake and this one happens to be on sale, or conversely, they might say, I don't think this snake is right for a beginner like you. You can actually replace those statements with just, here's the deal, blah, 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 humidity. Figure out, make sure that you're able to provide a consistent humidity at 95%, and then come back to me and one of these babies will be available. I mean, that's what I would say anyway. I'm guessing a lot of breeders do say that. There are just some snakes that are more resilient and can tolerate keeper error more than others, and those are the snakes that we call beginner snakes. It's for the people who walk out of the pet store with a corn snake in one hand and a fish tank in the other, and they're just going to learn by trial and error. The corn snake might survive that. A baby rainbow boa probably won't. But I'm talking to you who's watching this video, which means that you're clearly doing your research and you're not going to be in that category of people just doing it by trial and error. Speaking of trial and error, what you can do, if we're talking about humidity and many other subjects, is you can test it out before you get your snake. Set up your enclosure and let it run for 2 or 3 weeks and see if you can keep that humidity at 95% and see what it takes to manage that before you have a live animal in there. There are snakes that take more work and more vigilance than others. And then there's some snakes that just don't do well in captivity at all. I don't think I would be able to keep a dragon snake alive. And I'm a pretty good keeper, if I do say so myself. But let me go over a list of snakes that you might want to look into when considering your first snake. A ball python, I believe, is a lovely choice. So is a corn snake, like we mentioned earlier. A pine snake, bull snake, gopher snake, any of the Pituophis are really cool snakes to look into. Hognose snakes are cool. Dwarf and super dwarf retics, I would show you mine, but they're in shed. Actually, you know what? Look at this. Watch this. I just want to show you what I do when these guys are in shed. These girls are in shed. I just take whatever hide they happen to be sitting in and I give them some sphagnum moss. So she's sitting on top of some damp sphagnum moss. Not the point of this video, but that's just a little extra bonus. Super dwarf retic, a great choice if you're into a little bit of size, because they do get big. Here you go, babes. Let's put you back. I won't bother you anymore. How about little tiny pythons like Pip or any of the Antaresia genus? That would be children's pythons, spotted pythons, and Stimson's pythons. Those are all great choices. A boa imperator, like Handsome Dan here, they're a sizable snake as well sometimes, as are carpet pythons, but those are a good choice. Aspidites, that's Woma pythons and black-headed pythons. If you go with a blackhead, that's another snake that's a bit of size. Drymarchon, that's indigos and crebos, really cool snakes. Garter snakes, if you're into having an enclosure with a whole bunch of cohabitated snakes together, garter snakes are great to cohab. What am I missing? Let me know in the comments what species I missed. I could list all the snakes, but what I did is just sat down the other day when I wrote this video and I came up with a number of snakes that I could think of off the top of my head. So I'm sure I'm missing a bunch. I purposely left out the arboreal, like the full-time arboreal snakes, like emerald tree boas and green tree pythons, stuff like that, just because I think most people, when they're looking for their first snake, they want something they can interact with. And those snakes are a little bit harder to physically interact with. But if you're into having a really cool display cage and you want one of those snakes curled up on a stick, do your research and make that your first snake. We got Handsome Dan making his way up the rope now. So no matter what snake you choose, there's going to be something about them that's a little bit different than the others. There's going to be little idiosyncrasies, things that you have to learn a little bit more about. One of the easiest ones, in my opinion, to take care of is a ball python. That's why I have so many. But sometimes ball pythons just decide to stop eating. So you better know something about that for when it happens or if it happens. Super dwarf retics are great to take care of, but you better know something about tap training or target training or just avoiding bites if you want to keep a super dwarf. Maybe a dwarf or super dwarf retic is too big for you, so you're looking into one of the Antaresia species. Spotted python, children's, Stimson's, or pygmy python. You better know something about making an enclosure that's snake-proof, because if one of these little Antaresia get out, there's a good chance that you won't see them again. They are very tiny. So there's something about every species that you're going to learn, but they're not all going to be deal breakers. So you just go through and find the one that works best for you, and then just know as much as you possibly can about them. I've never liked the term starter animal because I've heard it used in the context of where it means kind of disposable animal. And I know that nobody literally means that when they say it, but when I hear a parent say, "We got our young child a hamster because we're hoping that they learn to take on the responsibility of caring for it, and it's a good starter animal." To me, that means if it dies, it won't be as sad as if a dog died. And I know that nobody literally means it that way. And I also know that most of the time when people say starter animal, they just mean the first animal that they're getting, the starter snake, first snake that they're getting. But I still don't like the term, and that's why. So you have to start somewhere, though. And the first snake that you get is going to literally be your starter snake. But don't worry about it because, as I said before, you're watching this video. You're already doing research. You're on your way to being a great snake keeper. I am curious, though, what snake you've chosen, but I'm even more curious about what snake did you originally choose, and then you found out something about that snake that made you pivot to something else. What was the snake that had a deal breaker? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.